No, estoy hablando de la Biblia. So give me a moment. Let me go and post this on my other channels and we'll get started. Shalom Akim. Water for joining today. Today's lesson is going to be titled "Make Bright the Arrows Against Babylon," which is ultimately we're going to get into how right now you have the EU starting to set up or to organize to come up against Babylon the Great, that being America. Because again, believe it or not, the Bible actually prophesizes that the EU, the once allies of America, will eventually make war upon her and ultimately shoot her with nuclear weapons, which we'll get into in a bit. But before we get started, let's go and give all honor and glory and praises to YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, QADASH, Barakatah YAHAWAH, Barakatah YAHAWASHI, Barakatah YAHAWAH, Barakatah YAHAWASHI, Barakatah YAHAWAH, Barakatah YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, QADASH. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who the house of David reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. So, like I said, today's lesson is entitled, "Make Bright the Arrows Against Babylon." Okay, because we're going to talk about this because of the events that have been going on this last week with Trump coming out talking about ultimately that the U.S. wants to get out of the NATO alliance, or there's much talk about that. And then besides that, there's also talks of the Europeans talking about how they have to stand up and make their own military defense force. Macron, the French president, is one of the main people behind these statements. And then on top of that, you also have our neighbors to the north, that being Canada, saying that they're going to seek out support from Britain and France, namely because of how they have nuclear weapons, right? Basically making backhanded threats to America that they'll seek allies who are able to fight against America with nuclear weapons. And why is that? Well, that's because in the Bible, it tells us that all the nations round about America that have capabilities of being able to shoot nuclear weapons upon her are going to do it. And that's why we're seeing people, even like Canada, talk about that it needs to have alliances with nations who have that nuclear annihilation ability, because again, there will be war against America, and what's going to happen is America will eventually burn, because it is Babylon the Great in the Bible. Okay, so before we get started, let's go and just read this scripture. This is Jeremiah 50, 51 and 14. YAHAWASHI of hosts has sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. Right? And then, well, actually, that's not. You know what? Let me start at Salakiakim at 9. Yeah, let me start at 9. Salaki. I'll finish off with that. This is Jeremiah 51 and 9. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her. Let us go, every one, into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. And you see, that's what's happening right now with America. You see, America has run its course. All the effort that Esau has put into making America a weapon to be used to ultimately control the world, even in their own agenda, it's already at that point. America has been built and set up by the elites that run our society. They would be known in the Bible as the kings of Edom. They've set up America so that way they could use it to basically help get it a foothold into every other country or every other nation in the world. And that's what these Edomites have done. They've managed to conquer the entire world, and now that they're done with America, they're now basically sucking off the last portions of wealth from it. They're using it for all its military power, and they're ultimately trying to establish a new world order, which you're seeing over there in Ukraine, getting back Amalek's ancient homeland of Khazaria, right? You're seeing them bring forward all these immigrant crises amongst all around the world, which is what the whole scripture about the Lord is going to fill Babylon the Great with men like caterpillars. Well, that's happening all over the world, right? But namely here in America. This is why you're having so many immigrants coming here. This is why around the world, immigrants have flooded into all these other westernized countries, all countries except for Israel. Now, they played along in the beginning, right? They allowed immigrants into their country, but then what happened is after 6 months of that taking place, they kicked them all out, and they cited like some sort of bullshit legal reasoning behind it. So now all countries are inundated with immigrants of other countries that are a result of all these past wars that Edom has played out throughout the world. So that way, all the westernized countries can now basically be an amalgamation of just random people. And the purebloods, according to Esau and their agenda, would be those over there in Switzerland and in Israel, and hence everybody would then be looking up to them as the purebloods, and they would basically be a controlling power over all of the other nations. Okay, now everybody has done that on the world, except for the nations that are aligned themselves with the opposite side of power, that being the BRICS consortium, Russia, Iran, China, right? All those other countries who are down with Esau's plan, and eventually, as it tells us in the Bible, will come up against them. Let's continue. And it says, and the whole point about that first scripture is that we're now, after all this time, we're now at the end of Babylon's buildup. Okay, its sins have finally reached up into heaven, with them pretending to go to the moon, and now they're pretending to they're going to be going to Mars, right? With all all the satellites and all the ISS space station they have in space, they're basically dominating all the spheres of our reality. That's excuse me, I've gotten that cough that came out about last week. But these devils ultimately they're now up in low Earth orbit, right? Leo, and that's what this is talking about. Now that these devils have finally managed to spread out their branches, per se, and so much so that they've even gone into space. It is now time for their destruction. It says, verse 10, YAHAWASHI hath brought forth our righteousness. Come and let us declare in Zion the work of YAHAWASHI. Right? So this is a prophecy that the Lord said that when this would happen, he would bring forward the prophets of old, right? Hence this is why now in this time, really since the 50s, the Lord had basically put the Spirit on our people to start to get into this truth and to go out onto the streets and teach our people on the streets, in public, or even online, to teach our people of who we are, that the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, that we do go back. When you look at our ancestry, we go back to the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible, and that all the things that took place that happened to the Negro, Latino, Native Americans were all prescribed, prophesied curses that would come upon the Hebrew Israelites if they failed to follow God, which we obviously did. But again, as just as that prophecy went through, there's prophecy showing how we would be woken up in the end times and put back in the right stead in life, right? We would be the new rulers in this new empire that's going to be built, right? The kingdom of heaven, right? After the last heathen kingdom, which we are currently living through, that being the kingdom of these Edomites, the so-called Caucasian and Israeli races. Verse 11, make bright the arrows, gather the shields. YAHAWASHI hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, for his devices is against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of YAHAWASHI, the vengeance of his temple. And you see, so what's happening right now is that the Lord is raising up the spirit of all the nations, right? And in this case here, particularly, he's raising up the spirits of these Iranians, these Persians. But again, along with them, you got their allies that are being raised up, that being the Russians and all these other nations, China. You got basically all the other 159 nations that are joined on to BRICS, right? Their spirits are being roused up. They're now starting to build up their military. They're finding gold and all these precious minerals that they never really had the resources to look for. Now, with the help of China and Russia, they're now able to have access to technology and abilities to now be able to go and mine amounts of gold and rare earth metals, and basically start to build up their military, their weaponry, right? Because why? Well, because again, it's prescribed in the Bible, right? It's a prophecy that the Lord would ultimately raise up these other nations against Babylon the Great to ultimately bring that empire down. So, that being said, let me get a drink real quick. Because with all these things that have gone on in the world, right, throughout history, World War I all the way to World War II, right, when you look at the way Esau has come up in society, how they've taken over countries and they took over people and their heritage, and they've taken the land and they continue to rule the world, it's being done in a very wicked manner, okay? And that wicked way of living is now on its way out, right? This is why you're starting to see everything crumble, right? And some of it is being done by these Edomites specifically, and them trying to destroy the old world. But what's happening is going forward, it's going to ultimately, they're going to try to bring forward the new world order, but that ain't going to happen, right? What it tells us is that the true world order is going to come. The Lord is going to bring forward that way, which is what he wrote in the Bible. And what is that? That he's going to ultimately wake up the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, the Israelites of the Bible, the Hebrew Israelites, who are still scattered throughout all the world, namely over here in the Americas where he brought us, right? And then what's going to happen is, in that particular time, the time of mercy, the time when the Lord is going out and calling his people, he's going to raise them up and give them everything they need to be saved, right? To be ready for the time when he comes back. And what is that? That's the truth, that's the knowledge, that's the Holy Spirit. Again, the Holy Spirit is simply just the understanding of what the Bible is, So next, let's go and get into this. This is Revelations 18 and 17. It says, for in 1 hour, for in 1 hour is so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like this unto this great city? And that right there would be America, the Hebrew Israelites. Oh, I'm sorry, where the Hebrew Israelites currently are at. So you see what's happening here is that eventually there's going to come a future time where there's going to be a place where America, or should I say there's going to be a place where there's going to be merchants looking at America from far off, and they're going to be basically making they're basically going to be making a testimony to see the destruction of America, right? Meaning that this isn't going to be a worldwide, like the whole earth isn't going to blow up, which a lot of people who don't know the Bible believe, right? The world ain't going to end. What's going to happen is that the empires of this world, the power structure, the status quo, is going to collapse in this time, right? That meaning that America, people will eventually see America be destroyed with ICBM nuclear missiles, okay? And like in a lot of those images that we actually bring out. So let's actually get this part here. This is Revelations 18 and 7. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit as a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burnt with fire, for strong is YAHAWASHI power who judgeth her. Right? So this right here is ultimately the prescribed future for America, because you see America in the spiritual world is seen as a harlot, a whore, right? That sits upon a beast, and that beast is NATO, the North American Trade Organization, right? Or basically it's America and the EU coming together to basically protect against Russia. Now that whole alliance is starting to become really shaky, especially with how friendly Trump has become with Putin, which we're going to get into in just a bit. So, but the point being is that America has lived deliciously on the world, right? It's managed to gather the resources of the southern hemispheres to put all the other nations into subjection, right? And it's been and because it's had that ability, these Edomites have been able to live in such a wicked manner to where all the rest of the world is languishing, right? The rest of the world isn't thriving. The rest of the world right now is having problems, and they're basically they're close to civil war. This is why you're seeing sedition popping up all over the world, right? Because you have war out there, because war for Esau is peace, right? That's how they're able to make their economies continue to roll. That's how they're able to spread their control, right? But the problem is that all this way of life is destroying the earth, and it's causing it to languish. So that being said, now that these devils have lived so deliciously upon the face of the earth, now it's time for them to be brought down, okay? And that's why the Lord has said that it's time for America to be judged. But this is also going to go to, let's get this real quick, to her allies, because like I was saying, there's going to be even a turning of the EU upon America, right? The beast, which is NATO, is going to hate the whore. Let's go and read that real quick. This is Revelation 17 and 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And the reason why I brought this out is because there's like I said, there's all those activity that's been going on this weekend from the EU, Canada, and America, and the falling out from the events that took place during the Zelensky meeting at the White House, where it was obvious that Trump and basically the Trump cabinet was looking at a reason to get into a disagreement with Zelensky, because they're ready to get out of that war, right? Trump, it seems like Trump wants to ally himself with Russia, right, and go against the other power. But again, it's all that right there, all that political grandstanding and maneuvering. That's really not for us to really care about, Akim, us Hebrew Israelites, because regardless of how these devils, whatever they do, whatever dance, political movements that they put on, the theater, and all the drama that they put on, it's ultimately going to lead with all the nations of the world being driven there into the valley of Jehoshaphat, into the land of Israel, and them being met there and to be destroyed by our power, our God. Okay? So it doesn't matter all these maneuvering that they're doing, but in what they're doing right now, specifically ties to this part of the scripture, right, that I just read, that the beast is going to hate the whore and it's going to burn her with fire. Because, and I'm going to read to you some events that took place, right? It says, actually, let me read the first one. Because again, if you haven't been paying attention to politics, Trump is making it very clear that he's done paying for NATO, that he's ready to get out of NATO, that's no longer serving a purpose. And ultimately, I think he's really just trying to get them to the European Union to pay their fair share of the price for this big ass military system, right? Because basically it's America who's paying for that military system, right? It's their military that's going into the rest of the world, that they're pretending that these other nations have access to it, but they don't, right? It's because again, NATO is really just America, but international flavor. So right here you have, this is what happened last week. It says, breaking, French President Macron addressed all Europeans to prepare for war with Russia. This was broadcast live across the continent. Europe will not accept capitulation of Ukraine to Russia under the guise of peace negotiations. Americans must decide whose side we are on. So you see, so right there, remember, so when Zelensky went to the White House and he was, purposely lambasted and made to look like a fool, and to have a reason for now America to now remove all telemetry, basically artillery or bomb striking information reports, make that available to Ukraine. It stopped all funding to Ukraine, right? But what happened is Zelensky the next day went to England, met with the prime minister, and basically got an okay with them, letting him know that the UN is still behind him. And that being said, the UN is now actually looking on separating itself from America. And then yesterday, I think it was yesterday, you had Christina Newland. She was one of the one of the top assistants there in Canada, some high figure in Canada. She came out saying that they're going to start seeking to make bigger alliances with Britain and France, basically the UN, but Britain and France in more particularly, because they have nuclear weapons, right? You see, because the Lord is raising up that spirit upon all these nations around America to have them get ready for that big request that the Lord made, to have them shoot arrows or shoot fire at the whore of Babylon. And that's why you're seeing all these things come about. That's why you're seeing French President Macron not siding with America and telling all the people of Europe to prepare for war, because they're going to go to war with Russia over Ukraine, because there's a lot deeper things going on than what they tell on the TV. But all the wars in East Europe, Ukraine, and all those things that are boiling up right now in Poland, they're all going to go down south, right there into the land of Israel. Because again, right now you're starting to see the Israelis, now that they got Trump Gaza, Now they're basically going to move on to the West Bank, which is right there where the Valley of Jehoshaphat is. So again, we're like the Lord said, right? That though it tarry, wait for it, but in the end it shall not tarry. And that's what we're seeing right now, man. We're seeing a lot of great movements going on the geopolitical stage, showing that we're very quickly going into a World War III scenario, and you're seeing all the old alliances start to shift, and you're starting to see biblical prophecy alliances starting to come into play. Now, that being said, let's read this other article that I got. It says, can NATO survive without the United States? It says, Europe is staring down the barrel of a stark new reality where the United States, being the backbone of NATO, the alliance that has guaranteed the continent's security for almost 80 years, is no longer a given. President Donald Trump's public animosity towards Ukraine Vladimir Zelensky, his willingness to embrace Russia's Vladimir Putin, and recent comments casting doubt over whether he would defend NATO allies if they don't pay, have all forced European leaders to start thinking the previously unthinkable. Is the U.S. a reliable security partner at a time when the continent is being rocked by its biggest war since 1940? But NATO, without the U.S., is far more impotent, with more than 1 million troops and modern weaponry at its disposal from 31 other countries in the alliance. It also has the wealth and technological know-how to defend itself without the U.S., analysts say. The U.S. and Germany are the biggest contributors to NATO's military budget. And it says civil budget and the security investment program at almost 16% each, followed by the UK at 11 and France at 10. A NATO fact sheet says analysts say it wouldn't take much for Europe to make up for the loss of Washington's contributions. So you see, they're now trying to make it seem plausible, because Europe really does want to go on its own. They don't want to attach itself to America anymore. Hey, Shalom, Mark, the water for joining. So that right there shows you that these prophecies that you know, it's crazy that they may not make sense at the time, but they eventually start to play out. Hold on here. That's good. Actually, let me read a little more. If European countries unite and buy the right equipment, Europe could pose a serious conventional and nuclear deterrent to Russia. Ben Shearer, Europe's executive director of the International Institute of Strategic Studies, the IISS, said in a Zoom call with CNN and other journalists in late February. So basically saying that if Europe was to go on their own, that they'll be totally fine, and that not only that, but they'll also be a nuclear power enemy. So you see, that's showing you that America, it's not as safe as it thought it would be, right? With its one-time allies. Like, what does the Bible say? They of thy confederacy that have brought thee even up to the border. Because you see, these Edomites, they're going to come close to their worldwide agenda of conquering the world. Okay, these devils that have used all these other nations to bring them to the border of how can I put it, to accomplishing their goals. They're going to get right there, then they're going to be destroyed. And who's going to destroy them? their partners, their friends that they thought were allies with them, right? So let's go and get this. This is Jeremiah 50, and we're starting at 23. Because one thing about this is because, again, this is all being done by the Lord. Even though right now you have Trump right here and he's trying to negotiate a better deal, right? He's trying to make amends with Russia. All these events going on in the world, even though they may not make sense right now, it's all being done by the Lord and the angels, right? They're now working the spirits to get all the players on the world to do exactly what the Bible says that they're going to do. And right now, all these nations are being stirred up, so that way they start to have animosity towards each other. And what's going to eventually happen, it tells you that that there's going to eventually be a nuclear war, okay, that's going to break out, which means the nuclear powers, which up until a couple of months ago, they were all on the same sides, right? Well, the majority of them, right? You had people like China, Russia, and some other countries that have joined on to the BRICS nations, but now you have the majority of the bigger nuclear weapons country holders. Now they're starting to be possible enemies, right? If EU was to separate on its own. Now that being said, all of these nukes out there, right? They weren't just created just so that way they could be used to scare people. No, they were created ultimately by the Lord, because they're the Lord's weapons, right? Because even though it was Esau here who had Oppenheimer develop them and they put them into power and creation, it was the Lord that gave these Edomites that knowledge, that passion to go after that form of knowledge and find it and seek it, right? And it tells you here, let's get this. This is Jeremiah 50 and 20, we'll start at 23. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation amongst the nations? I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, right? Babylon being the name of America in the Bible. O Babylon, and thou wast not aware. Thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against YAHAWAH. YAHAWASHI hath opened his armory, and hath brought forth the weapons of his indignation. For this is the work of the Lord power of hosts in the land of the Chaldeans. So you see, so even though it was these Chaldeans here in America, Chaldeans simply being an old ancient word in Babylon for the high magicians of that nation, the high magicians of this nation, that being the top physicists, the quantum mechanics, you know, all these people of high science and the literal Satanists that run in the political realms, they have all gathered together to bring forward their space weaponry system, right? If you look at the Jack Parsons and his development of JPL, Wernher von Braun and his development of NASA, right? They were a lot of Satanists, you know, performing dark rituals to try to bring forward this dark magic and ultimately this large deception, right? Now, eventually, the Lord is the one who ultimately put it in their spirits to do that, okay? And he would put it in their spirits to seek after certain types of knowledge, of information that was made available through them, right? When you get into the stories of Oppenheimer, the guy who developed the nuclear weapons, he explains how he would go to sleep and he would have these visions. They even showed it in the movie, right? It was a bit artistic the way that they depicted it, but it was the Lord giving Oppenheimer this information, this drive, right? This passion for him to seek that information, and that's what it means that these are the Lord's, that the Lord opened his armory, and for they are his weapons of his indignation, right? And that this is the work that he's worked in the land of the Chaldeans. So here in the land of these magicians, right, even though it was them who physically have accomplished to make these weapons, it was the Lord's spirit and his workings, his minutiae, the minutia of his spiritual labors, going throughout Babylon to make it happen. And why? Well, because again, so that way in the end time, the Lord could use these weapons against Esau, right? What did it say? him who rolls the stone, that stone shall be rolled down against them. Well, these devils, they created the nukes, and they used them against Ammon. Well, eventually the Lord is going to use them against these Edomites for creating them. Okay. Let's get this. This is Ezekiel. Let's go to Ezekiel. This is Ezekiel 21 and 9. It says, Son of man, prophesy and say, thus saith YAHAWASHI, say a sword is sharpened and also furbished. It is sharpened to make a sword slaughter. It is furbished that it may glitter. Should we then make mirth? It contendeth the rod of my son as every tree, and he hath given it to be furbished that it may be handled. This sword is sharpened, and it is furbished to give it into the hand of the slayer. Okay, and that right there is ultimately, again, just talking about how the Lord, how he has given the ability for the coming destruction of not only Babylon the Great, America, but of all the nations that have fallen in the past, all the amazing abilities, the engines of wars that were created, the cunning a strategy that was created to bring down a nation and make it so that way they would never rise up against. That all comes from the Lord, and that's exactly what's happening with all these high-end military discoveries that we've been seeing these last couple of decades, that Esau has allowed people to see, with all these amazing missiles and nukes that are able to go into space, right, to glitter in space, right? That's all the Lord putting it on these Edomites' spirits to create it, so that way they can ultimately be used by the Lord, right? There's been video testimonies of so-called UFO encounters at military bases, talking about how these chariots would go and they would turn on the nukes, and they would get them ready to be launched, and these people in their bases, they would be trying to disable them, they'd be trying to turn them off, but they can't modify them, they can't change it because they don't have control over it. Because again, we're gonna find out, I'm pretty sure, when everything is said and done, that technology, electricity, circuit boards, all that is a form of spiritual magic, right? In the other fields that we don't understand completely, right? This is because, again, remember, when you get into the story of Samson and his parents when they were in the church, praying, or when they were in the temple praying, that angel came down in that fire. Now again, and when the angel left, he left in the fire. Now again, remember, fire or electricity is just as a highly concentrated form of fire. Okay, so again, these devils, when they're making their electronics, they're making their systems and everything, they're working with this technology. Because again, remember, when you look at TVs, when you look at the circuit boards, all that, when you break it down to its most basic forms, it's minerals, metals. It's all these things that you would see back in the old days where witches would throw into like a potion to make something. And that's what these devils are doing, but they're doing it at a higher, more efficient rate. Okay? So, that being said, let's go move on to, this is Joel 3. Joel 3 and 9. It says, proclaim ye this amongst the Gentiles, prepare war, make the mighty men, wake the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I'm strong. Assemble yourselves and come all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O YAHAWASHI. So again, besides the Lord putting it on the spirits for these Edomites to create these weapons of mass destruction, the Lord is putting it on the spirits of all these other nations right now to be ready for a war. This is why you see Poland right now, they're now starting to train all their military-aged men on how to fight and be into war. This is why China has made it illegal to have effeminate propaganda or media on their TVs. They banned K-pop because, again, they don't want that feminine spirit to get onto their the young men, right? They're right now raising up a 1,000,000-man army for this coming war. Okay, and again, when you look around, there's other places around the world that they're starting to raise up their armies, getting ready for war. Okay, and again, this is because why? Because the Lord has commanded it in His words. This is why you're starting to see all these nations starting to rise up, saying that, you know, at one time a weak nation like North Korea now is starting to stand up and be mighty, saying that they have the nuclear weapons, that they're going to fire on America, they're going to fire on Japan, right? The weak are saying that they are strong, fulfilling this prophecy, right? See, because we're seeing all these things come to play. And in all the preparing of preparing Esau up so that way he could have his weaponry, and preparing the other nations, the Lord's going to ultimately prepare the main hero, I guess you could say, of the opposing forces from Babylon. And who is that? That would be Russia. Okay, let's go and read that. This is Ezekiel 38:3. And say, thus saith YAHAWASHI, behold, I am against thee, Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, right? And the apostle Tahar went in, and when you get into Russia, right, it basically means chief prince, okay? And when it tells you here, right, it says Gog, the chief prince of Meshech, right, to show you that it's a spiritual nomen omen that's being used in the Bible, that when you line it up, you could see that the Bible is actually referencing certain people, and hence this is how you know what nations are which nations in the Bible. Verse 4, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and will bring thee forth in all thy army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, every great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. And that's what's happening right now. This is why you're seeing Russia coming out with their brand new MiG airplane that's doing amazing things, that it's blowing the minds of all these NATO air pilots that are seeing what not only was it the new Russian MiG that came out, but there was a brand new third generation or fifth generational fighter from China. It looks kind of like a pyramid or like an arrow that they caught fighting, right? So these nations, they're being brought up, and they're being raised up in a way where they're going to be a formidable host. In this case here, where it says the Lord's going to put hooks in the jaws of Gog or Russia, well, that's because when you look at what's going on, the EU, the UN is not making it possible for Russia to join into their side, right? It's very obvious that Russia is on the outs, and that's because not only did the Rush, before they were known as the Russians, take out Amalek when he was the Khazars, take them out of their country in 900 AD, right? And basically banished them out of the land of, the land of Khazaria, modern day Ukraine, which is why Amalek is fighting for that land again. But he also kicked out all for example, the Jewish power back in the 80s. That's how Russia went from being a communist into a pseudo democracy, right? Because it's basically operating semi-autonomous right now, right? They're still connected to the elites, these Amalekites at the top, but they're not as tied to them as Amalek is tied to the America. And you see Russia wanting to stand up on their own, and hence wanting to do their own thing. But again, Amalek isn't liking that. And this is why you're starting to see Russia now having to take charge, and hence those hooks are being put in the jaws of Russia, and Russia's going to have to now stand up and fight, because again, it doesn't matter what they do, how peaceful they are, and how restrained they are in the things going on, they're constantly being attacked all the way to where the beast NATO has brought the war to the footsteps of these Russians by going into Ukraine, which the UN has said forever that they would never do, that they would not encroach on Russia, and look what they're doing now, right? So Russia has to now stand up. Those hooks have been put firmly in the jaws of these Russian Edomites, and they're going to fight against their other brethren, the American and Israeli Edomites, and the European Edomites. Because why? Well, because the Lord has put it on the spirits of these Edomite devils for them to be divided and to fight against themselves to bring down their empire. So let's get this. This is Jeremiah 50:14. Put yourselves in array against Babylon round about. All ye that bend the bow, shoot at her. Spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against the YAHAWASHI. Shout against her round about. She hath given her hand, for her foundations are fallen, her walls are thrown down. For it is the vengeance of YAHAWASHI. Take vengeance upon her, as she hath done, do unto her. And that's what's happening right now, right? You're seeing all these nations, and it's crazy, right? Because you never thought Canada would be seeking to come up against America or Mexico. But now you have Mexico and Canada, more so Canada, that are seeking to come up against and be an adversary to America. But I wouldn't put anything past these devils right now. Because right now, Esau, he's playing on the grand stage and he's putting out all these dramas. And remember, Esau controls all sides of the narrative, okay? So ultimately, his people are going to win. But how we're going to get to that win, that agenda, that finish line, ultimately, that's up to Esau and his agenda and what he's going to do, right? But we know that these devils are going to destroy the economy. They're going to bring forward a new digital ID, which are going to be required to get to operate within his system, and then that's going to be operated throughout all the world, and then ultimately World War III is going to come, and then that's when the Messiah is going to come. But in the meantime, us Hebrew Israelites, we got to just sit back, pay attention, don't get involved in it, don't participate in it, don't take the mark of the beast, don't go in their wars, and just sit back, get right with our Lord, learn what's going on, learn the truth, perform the rituals. But by the way, this upcoming week is going to be the week of Passover, so happy Passover to you, Achim, that are going to be celebrating. It'll be our New Year, or it'll be our Passover celebration for that week where we don't eat any leavened bread. If you haven't already, it's probably time that you go and start cleaning out your house or your living area of yeast, everything that you control. That way you could stay in proper observance of that ceremony, that ritual. Which again, I'm going to make a lesson, Lord willing, this week about it and on how to keep it. And I'm going to put the link up for the Passover service PDF file. That way you can just print it out and have it with you. So let's go and get this. This is Revelations 18:9. It says, and the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her, when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off, for the scare of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city, Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgments come. And that's the destruction of America that's prophesied in the Bible to come with the nuclear weapons that right now you're seeing being built up. Okay, that's the destruction that's going to come in that 1 hour. And there's only going to be one way that you're going to be able to get out from that. One is to be taken up into the Lord, or up into the chariots of the Lord, or to not be here in America, right? To be on the other parts of the world, which are not going to be affected by the World War III events. Now, if that's ultimately what the Lord is called out for you, He's going to make sure that you're on a trip on that day, or you're moving out of America or the European Union, right? But the thing is if you're here in America, either you're going out in one of two ways. One, you're going to be called up into those chariots, or second, you're going to be left here to be burnt up. This is why I feel that they have allowed a lot of those wicked immigrants to come up here to America, right? The people who were basically filling up the prisons down over there, right? Because that way their evil asses can come over here and be in the place of judgment to receive their own judgments while bringing on judgment upon these Edomites here in America. right? But again, that's dumbass. Not doing anything, going all fucking fast, burning out, just being fucking devils. See? But see, people like that are gonna be caught up in, if they don't repent, they're gonna be caught up in these nuclear fires and are gonna be destroyed along with all these other people who didn't get right, didn't wake up, or ultimately are gonna be here to receive the vengeance of the Lord for what they've done in their past lives against us Israelites, or even in this current life, what they're doing against us Israelites. Because believe it or not, a lot of these people of these other nations, these heathens, they don't like you Negro, Latino, Native Americans, right? They're against you, right? They may not be, up in your face about it, but secretly and behind, they don't want you to succeed. They'd rather have their people succeed, okay? So, that being said, let's get this. This is 2 Peter 3:10. It says, but the day of Yahawah will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burnt up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? And so you see, so knowing what's going on, knowing that we're towards the end of the end time events, these end days, and knowing that this place is going to be burnt up and destroyed, and everything that is built in it is going to be all melted away and destroyed. Should you be seeking to build an empire here? Should you be seeking to have that 10-year degree, so that way you could then have this mansion or whatever? No, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be preparing for an exit out of here. Now, what does that mean? That means that you make the Lord the first and foremost and more important thing in your life, right? You structure your life around this truth, and then you manage your situation, right? You make sure that you have enough to eat. You make sure you have enough to live on. You make sure that you take care of your family and around you, and you live, and then you find ways to live in the society, not as an American or as a patriot, but as a Hebrew Israelite living in their former captivity, right? Not participating in these pagan holidays, not participating in the false political system, not participating in all this wickedness and idolatry. And that's what we ultimately need to do, right? While we're here in Babylon the Great, being woken up, learning and coming back to our true heritage. That's what we should be doing, so that way we can escape the coming judgment, the day of the Lord that's going to come upon all the inhabitants upon the face of the earth, right? So let's get this. This is Matthew 25:31. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. So this is talking about after the destruction has come on America, right? Or right before the destruction comes, right? And everything is been playing out. The Lord is going to show up, right? It tells us in the Bible that he's going to show up when World War III is full on going on, the war's happening and everything, right? When the Lord shows up, he's going to arrive in his glory. What does that mean? That means that they're going to come with a bunch of just UFOs in the skies, right? You're going to see the earth, for the most part, be invaded by UFOs, as the news and the movies have taught the people. But really what that is, that's the Messiah, that's the Lord coming back in the second coming to come back and take over the world and rule it and rebuild it in righteousness, and to have his people, the Israelites, who he comes out of, be placed in positions of rulership, so that way we can then run the world in a beautiful, harmonic manner, right? Basically making earth into heaven, right? It says, verse 32, and before him shall be gathered all nations, right? And that means, that right there is talking about the 18 biblical nations which the 197 nations that exist today that the UN recognizes all go back to. So all these nations are going to see the Lord coming back. And it says, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth the sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, right, the sheep, come ye blessed of my father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundations of the world. You see, and that separating of the goats and the sheep is talking ultimately about how the Lord is going to separate all the non-Israelites and also of the Israelites, 2 out of every 3 Negro, Latino, Native Americans, and anybody whose father's lineage goes back to that bloodline. Those are all going to be separated and put on the left-hand side, because they're not going to be given salvation. They're not going to be given the option of salvation, either because they are disqualified because they're not an Israelite, or because they have chosen to squander their opportunity for salvation and to seek that protection, and they now have to pay and be their own sacrifices, and hence they're going to die in that day of the Lord. But to the other Israelites, the lambs, the sheep, the ones that are placed on the right hand of the Lord, right, spiritually right hand, they're going to be the ones who are going to know what's going on. They're going to be the ones calling upon YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, BAHASHAM, QADASH. They're going to be the ones performing the rituals, right, getting into the Bible and warning the other Negro, Latino, Native Americans and anybody whose father's lineage goes back to that bloodline who actually believe in God of what the truth is, and try to wake our people up before that great and horrible day of the Lord, right? And those are going to be the ones taken up and protected and be brought back to earth to rule the world in righteousness, right, in a proper manner. So let's get this, and then we're out of here. It'll be the last one. This is Sirach 5 and 7. Make no tarrying to turn to YAHAWAH BAHASHAM Shai, and put not off from day to day, for suddenly shall the wrath of YAHAWAH BAHASHAM Shai come forth, and in thy security thou shalt be destroyed and perish in the day of vengeance. And that's ultimately what we got to do, because again, I've heard Apostle Tahar say within the next 4 years. It could definitely be within that time, definitely be maybe a little longer. But the point being is that we're living in the last moments of the last days, okay? And this is not the time, and that whole saying that you're going to repent on your deathbed, that ain't biblical. That's the devil trying to put out those catchy, idioms and get you caught up. But to get this truth, you really got to, and to get right with the Lord, to be protected and to be saved and given that salvation, you have to come back and you have to study and you have to find out this truth for yourself. That's the thing that takes the longest, right? Because yes, you come in and you could, hear the names from us and you can repeat it, but not understand what it says. And ultimately, that's all faith, and that's all well and good. And if you're part of the elect, you'll be saved. But if you don't understand this truth for yourself, if you haven't learned it for yourself, then you're not going to know what's really going on, and you're just going to be taking it on a chance. And this is why we're always telling our people, you got to look into this yourself. You got to look into what we're saying, and you're going to find out that what we're saying is the truth. But that being said, now is the time to get right, because the time is short, and again, it's not that quick to learn all these things, to get into the history, find out who we are, how the Hebrew works, right? The whole story of the Bible, and to bring that into your mind, so that way you have it with you, so that way you could have that strong foundation when these devils do bring on these challenges of the mark of the beast and World War III and all these different things, the Jacob's trouble and everything prophesied in the Bible. But either way, Akim, I just wanted to go over this. I wanted to show that right now we're living in very crazy times, and prophecy is just continually making an appearance, right? It's showing itself because we're living in those end times. In those end times is when the majority of the end time prophecies were seen by the prophets and were explained, which is why right now we're seeing all these events coming and all these events happening before our faces. Now it's our job as Hebrew Israelites out here trying to warn our people, trying to wake our people up, giving out these warnings of when these things are happening, right? And that's the beautiful thing, that the Lord has made so many of us out here who are making these lessons, who are sharing these videos, sharing comments on boards, we're out there, and there's definitely enough warning out there, right? There's going to be, pretty soon, there's going to be nobody who's on the face of the earth who has not heard this truth, right? It tells us in the Bible, in fact, that that's the case, right? That when this truth is preached throughout all the world, then the end shall come. And we're at that point, Akim, because again, there's so many people who know about this truth, and this is why we're seeing the world coming to an end. So either way, hopefully this video was edifying, Akim. Hopefully we're able to show you how the writing's on the wall, and America only has a matter of months left for itself. So with all that, let's give all honor and glory and praises to Yahawah, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, QADASH, Barakah Yahawah, Barakah YAHAWASHI, Barakah Yahawah, Barakah YAHAWASHI, Barakah Yahawah, Barakah YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, QADASH. Tawad Akim for joining. I'll catch you brothers and sisters next week. Until the next time, if you have any questions, put them down in the comment board. If not, I'll see you throughout the week. Shalom.